Contentment and ambition. Well, when you hear these two words, they don't quite go very well together. Can a person who is truly contented be ambitious at the same time? And can an ambitious person be contented? This is a topic that is very interesting for us to explore because I personally know of many people with this dilemma. You might resonate with this too. On one hand, you feel like you're not striving enough for material success. On another hand, you also note that that's just going to bring you a lot of stress and maybe you should just accept things as they are. But would that make you a complacent person? Does it mean that you're not achieving your fullest potential? How can we find that sweet spot between striving and letting go? I'm your host, Kai-Sin, and you're listening to the Handful of Leaves podcast, where we bring you practical wisdom for a happier life. Today, we are privileged to have a chat with Tan Chade Meng, one of the most ambitious person I know on the planet, and he will be sharing with us on the topic. You'll listen to a lot of anecdotes from his time at Google to how he led the creation of the groundbreaking mindfulness-based emotional intelligence course at Google called Search Inside Yourself. Yes, you might have heard of this book. He is the author. He's also an award-winning engineer, movie producer, and a philanthropist. Meng is known for his relentless effort in spreading kindness. He has delivered a TED Talk on compassion at the United Nations, spoke about the development of kindness at the White House, and led mindfulness practice at the Vatican. A fun fact, the Dalai Lama gave him a hug for his 40th birthday. How cool is that? And President Carter once gave him a standing ovation. More impressively, he was nominated by the Archbishop Desmond Tutu and 7 others for the Nobel Peace Prize. And we're just scratching the surface. The list of accolades, achievements, and track records for him is really long. And that goes to show that he is a very determined person with a lot of ambitions. So let's hear from him. Hi, good to see you, Brother Meng.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Likewise, we're very thankful for you as well and very privileged to have you as our advisor and to be here for our very first episode of the podcast. Brother Meng, I know you as a very ambitious person and also know you as somebody who evangelizes mindfulness and meditation. And, a very big part of meditation and mindfulness practice is to be contented, to just see things as they are and be at peace with it. So I'm just wondering, in the fast-paced life, especially in Singapore and all other cities, people around us are always constantly striving for more. It's like there's never an end to the rat race. And sometimes I myself would wonder, to what end do I need to strive hard in life to be successful, to accumulate wealth? And also on the other hand, knowing that if I'm just contented, I might easily fall into complacency or become a blob. Like if I don't plan for my future, I have no goals at all, and I'm not determined to strive hard for anything, I might just lead a very aimless and meaningless life. I'm personally curious to hear from you whether you think that contentment and ambition are on two opposite ends of the spectrum. And how would you reconcile these two?
Right. I understand that a lot of people think they're opposites, but I have the contrary point of view. I think that they are not at odds with each other. They can be practiced together. Contentment can be used as a source of power. So let me start by saying something about contentment. First, contentment is not a behavior. It is a state of mind. Meaning that contentment does not mean doing nothing, because doing nothing is a behavior. Instead, it's a state of mind, which means that you're contented whether you're doing a lot or doing nothing. You have that same state of mind. So we have to keep that clear. So there are 2 questions actually to think about. One question is, can contentment help ambition? The other question on the flip side is, if you're ambitious, does that hurt your spiritual practice? So first answer is no. But again, not just no. Again, my view is contrarian, maybe. My view is that your ambition actually helps spirituality, not hinders, helps. Let me give you an example. The example is this person called Siddhartha. Siddhartha eventually became the Buddha. And this Siddhartha was very ambitious. Right? He learned, for example, he learned from the top teachers of his generation. Every time he exceeds or equals his teachers, the teacher offer him the leadership of the community. He said, "No, I want to do better than that." And then when he exceeded both of his teachers, he wants to do the best he could do in whatever he knew everybody assumed was working at the time, which was torturing the self, which of course didn't work, but he didn't know at the time. So he practiced, and again, he did to his best. Everything he did to his best. And because he wanted to achieve full enlightenment. That much ambition, right? So after he became the Buddha, same thing, the ambition did not hurt. He's again very ambitious. He's like before he died, he said he want to form all four communities of monks, nuns, male disciples, male lay disciples, and female lay disciples. And he want the Dharma to be solidly established around. And he sent his initial 5 monks, he sent in 5 different directions, so he spread and so on. Like very ambitious.
It's interesting you pointed the Buddha as an example because I wouldn't naturally associate him with an ambitious person. And he is very, very ambitious indeed. Beyond just the 5 ascetics, he also went around to many different cities and kingdoms to teach, and many people got enlightened. And it's exactly because he was so ambitious and relentless in his efforts in teaching, and also his great compassion, that we have got beautiful teachings up to today.
There's something else that's surprising even to me. Modern teachers, they always give you this same teaching. At least the teachers that I have, they always say, have no ambition, have no goals, just sit. If you have a goal, if you have ambition, if you have desire, you don't get samadhi. That's the teaching. To write my most recent book, I read through all the suttas, the entire Pali Canon. And in the Pali Canon, there is a sutta. The title is Chanda Samadhi Sutta. It is the discourse on samadhi due to desire. And the Buddha says, this desire gets you to samadhi. Like that, what?
Yeah, it goes against a lot of what modern teachers teach. By the way, for listeners who are not familiar with the term samadhi, it is a Pali term that is sometimes translated as one-pointedness or concentration. There isn't really a best way to translate it, but if we have to simplify it, you can just think of undivided attention or a deep state of meditation. Brother Meng, can you unpack for us how does desire help us in meditation at all?
There is the different word for desire and craving in Buddhism. It's very important. The Buddha says suffering comes from craving. The word craving is the word tanha in Pali, which is literally means thirst, as in thirsty. The word for desire is a different word. It's chanda. And chanda can be good or bad. So in this case, the Buddha was talking about good desire. And so he said that specifically this desire for good qualities to arise and for unskillful qualities to not arise. So what are skillful qualities? Love, compassion, kindness, peace, and so generosity and so on. And then the desire for lust, greed, hatred, delusion to not arise. And he said this desire plus the effort you put in to fulfill the desire. If you can do that, then you get samadhi. And that is, the Buddha said, that is chanda samadhi, samadhi that arises out of desire. So therefore, I like to say that a lot of modern people have this misconception. And the first misconception is that if you have ambition, if you're ambitious, you will not grow spiritually. The second misconception is the reverse, which is that if you want to grow spiritually, you cannot be ambitious. And I think both are wrong. If you have the right kind of contentment, then you'll be successful. It grows your ambition. And if you have the right kind of ambition, you will grow your contentment. And the right kind of contentment is contentment based on samadhi. And the right kind of ambition is the ambition for all things wholesome. And the Pali word is kusala. So these two work together to reinforce each other. And that's my view based on my understanding of the Buddhist suttas and my own practice.
Do you know of anybody who managed to balance these two, contentment and ambition, and lead their life in a skillful way?
There is, yes, and I'm thinking instead of giving you a specific example, I want to give you a class of examples. So there is a book which I talked about in one of my books. The book is called Good to Great. And this book started as a research project, which is they try to figure out what makes the most outstanding leaders. And then after the research, they found that even before that, they were like trying to figure out what makes organization go from good to great. And they found that the way all these organizations have one thing common, which is they have a certain type of leader. And this type of leader, in the research, they call them level 5 leaders because they split leadership into 5 levels. So level 4 leaders are outstanding, competent CEOs. These are people who can run companies and so on and so forth. So level 5 is even better than that. And level 5 leaders are level 4 leaders with 2 additional qualities. One is great ambition, and the second one is personal humility. In the same person. Then again, so this is highly related to the topic we've been talking about. Right? How do you get great ambition and personal humility in the same person? And the answer is that these people, this whole group, or this whole class of leaders, they are all ambitious about one thing, which is the greater good. Right? They're not ambitious for their own glory. They're ambitious for let's do something big for this organization, for the world, and so on. Whatever is greater than themselves. And that's how they can be ambitious and humble at the same time. And second, more importantly, that's why they're so effective, right? Because that mindset is very inspiring. Right? If your leader is always not just talking about, he's like genuinely trying to do the greater good, then you want to follow him or her.
Yeah, to add on, because I'm a fan of that book as well, the beautiful part about a level 5 leader is that even if he or she were to leave the company would still be great without their existence. And this is beautiful because it's like leaving a legacy. And in Buddhism, we talk about being interdependent and the concept of non-self, meaning any success cannot be attributed to one person, but it's a collective of causes and conditions coming together. So yeah, I think that really builds and adds to the humility of a person. So as we talk about being ambitious for the greater good, I'm going to play a skeptic over here. What if somebody is hired in a large corporation or any company? Companies are usually driven by profits, right? So that they can stay afloat and sustain their day-to-day operations. And even the most noble industry, like the medical industry, it's still going to be a little bit fuzzy when it comes to money. So how would you tell somebody who has no direct control over the kind of impact that they can create in their work? How would you advise them on how they should view their work?
First, I'll talk about something in general, and then we go to the specific. So in my own life and my own career, this quote comes back to me a lot. It's a powerful quote, and this quote was by Suzuki Roshi. He's a famous Zen master in America, and he has a great sense of humor. He's always very funny, and so as usual in this case, he was presenting a teaching in a way that is humorous. Right? So the story was that he was looking at a student in one of his talks, and he pointed to all of them, and he said, "All of you are perfect just as you are, and you can use some improvements. This moment, whatever I'm doing, that is perfect just as it is, and I can do a lot more, and I should do a lot more." So everything I just told you earlier, this was the quote that underlies it. And applying to what you just said, the question is, if if you want to do good, your wholesome intention, but your company is not, right? And then again, there's a spectrum, right? It's like, because not all companies are evil, right? And not all companies are like angelic, right? And they all exist in some part of the spectrum. Like, what do you do? So the first thing for me, is to recognize the difficulty. This is a difficult situation, and this is life. Like, life is not all nice and everything works out. Like, in life, these situations occur all the time, and it's tough. So that's the first, and the reason to acknowledge this is so that you don't beat yourself up. It's like, whatever you do, I've done my best, because this was the hand I was dealt. Why? Because this is life. Right? So that's number one. Acknowledge that this is hard. Number two, for me, is to, and this doesn't always work, but sometimes it works spectacularly, is to find a way to do good and for everybody to win at the same time. I can think of one example. To me, it's inspiring. It came from Larry Page, who was a founder of Google. So in the early days of Google, we did not have advertising. And with the reason is because Larry, to his credit, he thinks that advertising is bad for the user. Right. So all he wanted to do is to do good for the world. And he said advertising is, why do I want to advertise anything? It's a distraction. And so he refuses to allow it. However, we had no business model at the time. we didn't know how to make a living. And so the other executives keep trying to convince him we should have ads, because otherwise we don't survive as a company. And he keeps saying no. And finally, there was a solution. And the solution came about, first, it came from Larry's clarifying what he wanted. He said the reason he didn't want to ads is because it creates negative value for the user. And so he said, as if we can make ads useful, then he'll say yes. But useful for the user, so it adds positive value rather than negative value. And for the engineers, to their credit, they figured it out. Right? And the answer is ads that are relevant to your search. Because you're searching for something anyway, the ads will be useful to you. So it's a win-win for the user and for us. And later on, we didn't know at the time. Later on, it turns out that by doing that, we earn a lot of money because we get a lot of click-throughs. Right? And so this example of like 5 ways to do win-win, even if you're a junior position, in your situation, 5 ways to talk to the boss or the person in the next team or whatever. How about this? How about if this is why it's important to me? I know this is important to you. How about if we do this? We do good for the team, and we both do well also. So that's second thing. If not possible, then what? And the third thing is to minimize harm, right? So for me, at least in my team, I don't do harm because my team is all I can control. Right? There's a third thing. And then if that still fails, right, what to do? Find a new job. However, we know this is a real world. Not everybody can find a new job. If that still fails, what to do? Last resort is to use this as practice. Right? So try to do your best, see all the suffering that you're experiencing it, and experience it as a practice.
Thanks for those 5 tips. Very helpful. And I think it goes to show that in the process of trying to succeed in life and be ambitious, we don't necessarily have to do so at the expense of others. We can find opportunities to add value to create those win-win situations like you've mentioned. Another question. Just now you mentioned that contentment is a mind state, but how can one know whether he or she is contented or just being complacent? Because the line is blurred. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. It depends on the situation. There are 2 answers. The first answer is to test yourself. And there's a saying in American Buddhism. It's like if you think enlightened, just go back to your family for Christmas. You see how enlightened you are. So you go back to family gathering, your cousins and your uncle and your parents will still your parents and so on. It's like, buay tahan. So your illusion of enlightenment gone. So test yourself. That's one. Second thing, I think even more important, but it relates to this as well. If you're not caring about other people's suffering, then your practice is not there. So no matter how quote unquote enlightened you are, one way to look at it, if you're contented just staying in a cave all day, every day, and like, how about the suffering of all the people in the world? What are you going to do about it? Nothing. I'm just going to stay in my cave all day. That is the test. You just fail the test. All the enlightened people I've met, they are motivated by two things. They're motivated by peace and compassion. Right? So they are motivated wanting to have that at peace and happy all the time, and wanting to serve the greater good. And that is why, and I think you've seen this yourself, all the best, the teachers you admire the most, they're always very busy because they're always teaching. I mean, they don't have to teach. They can always stay in the monastery or the cave all day and then don't come out. But they're always serving. So that's how you know the difference between complacency and contentment.
So what I'm hearing is that for a person who is contented, it doesn't mean that sit back, relax, and do nothing. There's a lot of active effort to serve the community, to relieve suffering. And from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like being contented is more of knowing that I've tried my best with all these active efforts, and whatever I can control, I will do it. But whatever I can't control, the result, then I would accept it. Is that how you would tell the viewer about content?
Yes, and I'll go a little bit deeper. It's not just about I've done my best. It is about this moment is perfect just as it is. And I can do a lot more. So that is contentment. Contentment is not one or the other, it's both. This moment is perfect. You can't get better than this. And we can improve it a lot. The second thing is, again, I agree with you. And the analogy that I learned from my teachers, which I find very helpful, is the analogy of the good farmer. Right? A good farmer does everything that he needs to do, till the soil, plant the seeds, put the water, and so on and so forth. And then he say, I have done everything I can do, and now I let nature take its course. That's how I try a lot, but it doesn't always work. Everything that I do, I try to do that. I try to say, I've done everything humanly possible, and whatever happens, it's beyond my control. I let nature take over. Why? Because this moment is perfect, just as it is.
Nice. Just now you mentioned being contented allows you to be a better meditator. You would have more samadhi.
Correct.
And more samadhi equals to success. I suspect some listeners might think, I can barely squeeze out time to sit on a cushion for even 10 minutes. How am I supposed to meditate? And do I have to be contented to meditate? Or do I have to meditate to feel contented? Or do they fit on one another? So how would you explain this?
Right. Okay. So I have a couple of thoughts in my mind. The first thing I want to say is acknowledge that it's very hard. It is very hard. to sit for 1 hour a day is very hard. Actually, I correct myself. To do it is not hard. The hard part is to sustain it. It's that whatever practice you want to commit yourself to doing is not hard. 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, no problem. The problem is after 3 days, can you still sustain? So for me, I tried doing 3 hours a day. I could not sustain it beyond 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah, that was my limit. So I know how hard it is. So first, acknowledge to yourself at least that it's hard. And if you have any doubt, if what I say means anything to you, you say, okay, I say it. It's very hard. Say Chade Meng say one. Yeah. Given that it's very hard, the advice that I give to everybody is to start with 1 breath a day. Because if I say 10 minutes a day, you can have valid excuses. I got no time, I'm tired at the end of the day, blah, blah, blah. If I say 1 breath, you got no excuse. So take your proper meditation posture, do 1 in breath, 1 out breath. That's it. If you want to commit anything, commit to that one thing. And then anything you want in addition is bonus. So since I'm doing one breath, since I'm sitting down already, might as well do two more, do three breaths. Since I've done 3, might as well do 10. Since I've done 10, might as well do 2 more minutes, and so on, right? But it's okay. If you don't do that, it's also okay. One breath. And my guess is that one breath a day, if nothing else, it will sustain you until you're ready to keep adding again. And I want to also claim that one breath a day itself is already helpful. If you do that, put full your total but gentle concentration of one in breath and one out breath, just that one per day, that alone, I would guess that it will make a difference in your life already. So try that out. If you do 2 minutes a day, I won't guess, I'll guarantee you will feel the difference in your life. So if you want a difference in your life, try 2 minutes. See whether what I'm saying is true or not true. So that's my second thing I say. First thing I say is it's very hard. Second thing, try one breath. If you can, do 2 minutes, because 2 minutes, that is where you actually begin to experience a difference in your life. I mean, not beginning, I can guarantee the experience difference in your life. Before that, one breath, I can guess it, but I can't guarantee it. So that's the second thing. The third thing I want to say is I can tell you a way that I thought it was going to work, but it didn't work. I tell you 2 ways that I can guarantee it will work, but you probably can't make it work for yourself. So what is the way that I thought would work but didn't work? I thought it was joy. So I thought, remember earlier I told you that in Samadhi, you feel joy arising and feel your body and mind. And so, Kai-Sing, we did a class together, and you know that we can do this in 8 hours. In an 8-hour class, you can learn to bring up joy on demand consistently. Right? So I was under this illusion that if I teach everybody this technique, then they'll do it daily because it's joyful. And then I realized I was being stupid as usual. It doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work, I realized, is because the joy is not as intense, or was still not as addictive as the joy coming out from other things, like playing video games. That is intense and addictive, and this joy you get from sitting and doing nothing is not addictive enough. Right. So that didn't work. I mean, it's still a good practice, but it didn't fulfill my goal of getting people to have a sustained practice. So I tell you what I know guarantee will work, but I'm guessing you can't do it, and you can. But based on that information, you can figure out something that might work for you. 2 things. The first thing is to have a community, preferably live in the community that practices a fixed amount of time a day. So, for example, if you live in a monastery, and the monastery every morning they wake up, the first thing they do is they meditate for 2 hours, and so on. And before they sleep, they meditate for 1 hour. Then it's compulsory; you must join. And you live there. You got no excuse. First, I guarantee you will get your practice. But of course, not everybody has the type of living arrangements. So you can figure out how to do it. So one way is if you're living with a friend, you can arrange with your friends, or you can arrange of doing online with community and so on. Let me know how that works if you try it out. The second thing I know guarantee will work is if you have to teach this. Right? If you have to teach meditation, then you'll be forced to practice it every day. Otherwise, very Lao Kui. All your students are better than you. Lao Kui, paise. So for those of you who are fairly advanced in your practice and you find that you cannot sustain, I recommend this to you. I recommend that you try teaching. Then your practice, you have the momentum because you're forced to.
I'm thinking some listeners might think, I can barely meditate myself. How am I qualified enough to teach other people? So it's just an interesting story. A couple of weeks back, I was speaking to a friend, and she was just narrating how one of her friends brought her daughter to the meditation class. And after some time, some weeks, the daughter actually led the mum to meditate. And the instruction was as simple as, okay, now watch your breath, breathing in, feel relaxed, breathing out, feel relaxed. So teaching somebody doesn't have to be intimidating. It can be to your friends, your family members, just do something casual. And it's really a good practice to really understand whether you have truly internalized how to meditate. I personally have grown a lot when I started guiding a small group of friends to meditate. So yeah, you should give it a try, definitely. You know, some people have this fear of meditating too much because they feel that if they are too contented and peaceful, they might lose the ability to function in a fast paced world. What's your take on that?
I think the only people who have that fear are the people who don't have a practice at all to begin with, or not a sufficiently deep practice. Because those who have a practice, they know that this is not a danger. It's because all the proper teachers would teach this, is that you cannot just teach mindfulness. You also have to teach compassion together. And if you are practice both, I mean, you'll be tempted. You'll be tempted to like go to a cave and never come out and never do anything for anybody. But your compassion will keep nagging you. And overall, in the long term, there is no way you can say, I'm going to like not do anything for anybody. Right. So that addresses the for the spiritual space. I think your question is also about the business space. Right? So for people who, let's say people in Google, they practice meditation and after a while they don't feel like working anymore. I haven't seen that happening. What I've seen happening are there are like two outcomes. The first outcome are people who got even better at their work. They became even more motivated. Right. So, for example, I have engineers in the Search Inside Yourself class who found that if they calm their minds down, now that they control over their minds, if they calm it down, they can solve problems they couldn't solve before. And so some of them got promotions out of this. And some of them, they found that they have to work with. I mean, they found that what was holding them back, especially the engineers, is that they have the problem working with other people. And through Search Inside Yourself, they overcome that. So they became more successful. So we had a lot of these examples. Right? So they didn't become less ambitious. I don't know whether they became more ambitious, but I know that they became more successful. So that danger did not happen for that group. That's group one. Group two, there are people who discovered that they didn't like their work. And part of it is because as part of the class, we talk about looking deep into yourself and figuring out what is important to you, what's really important. And there are a group of people who find that what they were doing at the work was not really important to them. And so some of these people, they found new jobs within Google. Right? So somebody say, I really wanted to do like HR, whatever it is. I didn't want to do engineering. So they convince them. Usually they're high performing. So usually they get their transfers because the other side wanted them as well. Then there's some percentage of them who would like join non-profits and so on. In none of these cases did I see where they have no ambition. They just had their ambition redirected. And I think the outcome was good for them and for the world, right? Because now they function at the level that they're happy with. And because they're happy and more productive, we as a society we benefit.
So both outcomes are great. It's like the win-win situation that you talked about. I'm curious, Brother Ming, do you know of individuals whom you can name, ideally household names, who are very successful and they are also very serious practitioners in meditation?
Oh, let me see. I can only name people who already alter themselves.
Oh, what do you mean?
So the people who are somehow uncomfortable saying that they're meditators. So yeah, so I can tell you a story on that, which I thought was very funny. So my book came out in French. Right? So I went to France to promote the book, and then my French publisher, he's a gay man and a Buddhist, and he told me that in his lifetime he came out twice. First time he came out as a gay person. Second time he came out as a meditator. The second time was harder.
Why was it harder?
I don't know. I just laughed. I thought it was very funny. So one of them that come to mind is Bill Ford. He was a chairman of Ford Motor Company. One of them is Scott Kearns. Scott, there's this company called Juniper Networks. It was one of those good to great companies. Like it was a good company, and then it became great. And Scott was the person who made it happen. And he's a level 5 leader. I know him like personally very well. I can testify that he's every bit as good as the textbook say about him. And of course, he's a meditator. Those are two examples. Let me see the other example. Sergey, I know Sergey meditates and does yoga. Sergey from Google. I don't know who else I can out in public, but these are those I know who already saying that in public.
It seems like people are hesitant to call themselves meditators. Why do you think that's the case?
I think for a very long time, meditation was seen as weird. And I don't know why. So when I started trying to promote mindfulness in Google in the beginning, 2007, it was still considered as weird. By 2015 or something, it was like mainstream. And I think it happened so quickly that everybody forgot that not that long ago, it was weird.
Thanks to you, you made weird into cool.
Okay, thank you.
So, in terms of the weirdness, do you think there are misconceptions around meditation? Because I do know of people who are quite hesitant to meditate.
So I think the misconception comes from not understanding it. If you understand it, it's actually very simple. It's just training. It starts from the training of attention. And through training of attention, you train the mind. And then the other techniques training the mind, such as creating mental habits, like the habit of kindness, and so on. And then there's a science behind it, there's neuroscience behind it. And so if you break it down into what it is and what is the science supporting it, everybody gets it. So when I created Search Inside Yourself, the way it was formatted at first was the first lesson was a 2-hour class on the science of mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And then the next class, which is a week later, is a full day mindfulness class. Mindful sitting, mindful standing, mindful eating, mindful walking, mindful blah, 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 whole day. And so the challenge I have for myself, right? So these people come to the first class, I tell them, okay, this is the science. And I tell them next week, when we come back, whole day. And the question I always ask myself, what is the percentage of these people coming back for the second class? Knowing there is a whole day of mindfulness, this mindfulness, that. And my best guess at the time was 50%. I will lose half these people, especially the engineers. So that was my projection. When I've tried it out the first time, 100% came back for the second class. And I thought it must be a fluke. And I tried the second time, 100% came back. I mean, there's a person who has a family emergency and so on, but barring that, 100%. The third time, 100%. And then I realized it's not a fluke. I realized that all they needed to do was to understand it. They'll come. Right? And just doesn't take so long. Just 2 hours, I explain to them, they get it. And so before I did that, people think it is weird because it's like you see some guy just sitting there, sometimes making weird noise, or whatever it is. And then they can't explain why they're doing. And the way they explain it to a normal person or to an engineer is so weird. I'm getting in touch with the universe. Like, it means something to them. And for a meditator, I understand it. But for a normal person, it's like, what is he talking about? Right? And so, because that was the default description, right? That's the default people, those who meditated, that's how they talked about it. It became like weird. And so all I had to do is to talk about it differently, truthfully, right? So I don't lie about it, but talk about truthfully, but in a way that is understandable even to me. And if I understand it, everybody understands it. So that's it. So that's how I demystified it.
Definitely. I do think that understanding can make the topic a lot more relatable and less scary. For those of you listening, if you haven't tried meditation and you have not read up on any resources, we'll put it in the show notes. You can have a go at it. And who knows, it can change your life just like how it has changed mine. One more question, Brother Ming. You know, some people, they think that as they're young, they should probably prioritize their careers and try to be very, very ambitious, you know, strive for all this success. And only once they have it all can they retire and do all this spiritual activities and pursuit. So, what are your thoughts around this?
I think it's understandable. However, this thought is again based on the misconception that spirituality and success are mutually exclusive. And happily, they are not mutually exclusive. Not only that, they help each other. Right? At least the spiritual part will help your career part. So if you don't do it, then you're missing out on something. Right? I mean, the way I look at it, let's say you have a job. Somebody comes to you and say, "Hey, there's this something. It's almost free." And then you can become more successful. And your spiritual needs are taken care of. You want to do or not? Say, don't want. Then you miss out, you Lugi. So my take is try to understand how your spirituality works, help you become successful, research inside yourself, and then otherwise you're very Lugi. So first understand it, and then decide. And if you understand it and you still decide, I'd rather put all this meditation, whatever, aside first and just try to get a successful career. I say, okay, can. However, just do one thing for me. I guarantee it's good for you and it's good for you. And the one thing is have a daily awareness of your mortality. So this is one of the most important practices that anybody can do, that I do myself. Every day, at least once a day, just remind yourself, someday I'm going to die. You look at your family member, your people you love, and just think, someday they'll all die. That's it. That's the whole practice. Don't have to do anything else. Don't have to meditate and so on. Why do this? If you don't do this, you would totally neglect your spiritual needs. If you do this, you will not totally neglect because there is something in you that will be reminded that what is really important in life.
I think that kind of very nicely sum up the topic on finding a balance between ambition and contentment, because personally, through contemplating on death and how fleeting life is, I would realize there are certain things I have yet to achieve for the greater good. And that's where the striving comes in, right? Every day I try to spend my time more meaningfully. And then on the other hand, certain things that have already been done, I have tried my best. I can have no regrets, no remorse. So I encourage people to do this more often, even though it can sound really morbid. But there's a saying that we live to learn how to die. So yeah, thank you very much, Brother Ming, for sharing all your insights today. Can we end off this episode with you giving some actionable takeaways? So if you can tell the listeners, what are some things they can do in order to lead a happier life? What would that be?
Okay, I can assign you 2 homework for the listener. You can do either or both. I guarantee you they just take very little time. The first one I already talked about earlier, 1 breath a day, right? Formal meditation posture, whatever that means to you, in breath, out breath. The other practice I would like to do literally takes no time, is randomly or for once a day, look at the person, people who you care most about, your kids, your spouse, or whatever it is. And then just think, I wish for this person to be happy. Right? Or if you're at the office, just choose a random co-worker. Just think, I wish for this person to be happy, right? And then on your way home, somebody you just meet randomly on the side of the street or on the bus or whatever. Just think, I wish for this person to be happy. It literally takes no time because you're sitting there, whatever, anyway. And if you do this, you wish for people to be happy, I want to suggest do it for 3% a day, 3 people a day. If you do it, I guarantee you, your happiness will increase.
In fact, we shouldn't wait for the listeners to end this episode to do it. Can you guide us to do the one breath meditation?
Sounds good. Can I do both?
Sure.
Okay.
Even better.
Okay. Now sit in the posture that allows you to be alert and relaxed at the same time, whatever that means to you. And so just take 1 in breath, bringing total and gentle attention. And 1 out breath. This is practice 1. practice to bring to mind somebody, maybe somebody you care about, and just think, I wish for this person to be happy. You may notice that once you made a wish, you're smiling. And if you want to, just spend the next 5 seconds just bring attention to this experience of joy. And thank you for your attention, my friends.
That was great. Thank you once again, Brother Meng, for being on this show, and may you be well. Hope to see you again.
Thank you, my friends. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks, listeners, for tuning in to the Handful of Leaves podcast. If you have taken away something, please leave us a review wherever you are listening to this episode and share with us what are your key takeaways. In the next episode, we're going to explore deeper into this topic on contentment and ambition, and my co-host Cheryl will be joining us for a chit-chat session. And if you would like us to address any questions relating to this topic, please leave a comment in our Telegram channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please follow us at Handful of Leaves. You can find the link in the description below. Also, if you want more practical Buddhist wisdom for a happier life, you can log on to our website, www.handfulofleaves.life. We feature stories written by ordinary folks with extraordinary wisdom on topics such as mental well-being, productivity and work, dealing with relationship, and many more. If you're interested to share your wisdom and insights, you can also write to us to volunteer as a writer. Who knows, your story can transform somebody's life. And meanwhile, stay happy and wise.